Welcome, folks, to the 2023 Smithsonian Folklife Festival. The festival is produced by the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and presented in partnership with the National Park Service. The festival strives to maintain an accessible and inclusive environment for visitors of all abilities. If you're in need of accessible seating options or assistive listening during this presentation or any presentation, please see our venue manager volunteers. Those are the folks wearing an Ask Me button for assistance. Detailed accessibility information about all of our festival accessibility services, including ASL interpretation, audio description, real-time captioning, and a variety of other services, can be found on our website or by visiting the information booth. Festivals like this don't happen without the participation of lots and lots of folks. This program is produced in partnership with Missouri State University. That's where I'm from. I am Brooks Blevins. I'm a history professor and a specialist in the history of the Ozarks at Missouri State. This program is also supported in part by the Missouri Division of Tourism, Arkansas Tourism, the University of Arkansas, Experience Fayetteville, Wingate Foundation, Committee of 100 for the Ozark Folk Center in Mountain View, Arkansas, the Ozark Beer Company, Crystal Bridges Arts and Social Impact Accelerator Partnership, and the Missouri Folk Arts Program. The program received federal support from the Latino Initiatives Pool, which is administered by the National Museum of the American Latino, the Asian Pacific American Initiatives Pool, administered by the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, and the Smithsonian American Women's History Initiative Pool. And in-kind support comes from Montana Cans and Mountain Valley Spring Water. All right, we're in for a treat. We've got a little session here on musical families and family bands or family musical groups, however you want to describe it. We got siblings, we've got a brother and a sister here. We've got a mom and a daughter. So we got all different kinds of family dynamics going on stage here, and we're going to explore a little bit of their background and what it's like to be performing with family all the time. And I didn't mean that. See, I'm already suggesting that there's problems coming up, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Let me introduce our folks here. Closest to me are two members of the Williams family, a gospel music group from Poplar Bluff, Missouri. This is Latoya and Dewayne, siblings. They are part of their family group, the Williams family, based out of the Emmanuel House of Praise Church. Poplar Bluff is on the kind of eastern edge of the Ozarks, and we'll get to hear a little bit more about that. Their family band also consists of Pastor Leroy Williams and his wife Annie, and they're out here in the audience. And you still got time to catch them here at the festival. I'm not sure when you're playing next. Okay, 3 p.m. tomorrow. All right, is that over there or? Okay, in the Rensselaer stage. Okay, so you still got time to catch the Williams family before we shut down. On to their right are the McCools. That's mom Crystal and daughter LillyAnne. They are mother and daughter members of the bluegrass group Sylamore Special, and they are based in Mountain View, Arkansas, which is home to the Ozark Folk Center, which I mentioned in the introduction there. Crystal plays the upright bass, and LillyAnne plays banjo. LillyAnne is an award-winning banjo player. This band, Sylamore Special, which I think you can also catch before we're plumb done here, also features a group of siblings as well, the Parkers. Mary and Gordon, so you need to try to catch them before we leave. Crystal, when do you guys play again?
I don't think they're going to play the rest of this today.
Okay, so
I think they're done for today.
Okay.
We're playing with some other people, but not with Sylamore Special.
All right, okay. So you can catch
They'll be
them.
here tomorrow, though.
Yeah, you can catch them tomorrow. And so here we go. This is our family group. I'm going to start off by, we'll start with the Williamsons, and whoever wants to, Dewayne or Latoya, just tell me a little bit about where you're from, Poplar Bluff, your family's connection with that town.
Okay, he said I'm going. So, born and raised, I and my mom, or my brother, my dad, were all born and raised in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. My grandparents and great-grandparents were there, so there's several generations. Actually, most of our family actually sings, maybe in different groups or sections. My grandfather sings. We have cousins that sing as a group themselves. So, yeah, we just come from a family of pastors and preachers and singers.
Okay, all right. Crystal or LillyAnne, whoever wants to take it, the same question, except tell us a little bit about Mountain View, where you're from.
Well, you want to talk about Mountain View? If I let her talk, you won't get her to stop. But she loves Mountain View, and so much so that she is not that child like a lot of kids. It's a very small area with very little industry. Tourism is probably, I would have to say, our biggest industry, but most everyone around there her age is trying to get a job somewhere else and get out of there, but LillyAnne went off to college and knew what she wanted to go into because she knew she would be coming back to Mountain View. We don't have a pediatrician in Mountain View, and so she's going to be an RN and trying to get her AP RN in pediatrics so that she can come back and bring that back to the community so she can make a living and stay there, because where else can you play a banjo all the time? And there's most people want you to quit, but she gets a lot of opportunities to play. So,
All right.
you answer the next question.
Okay. However you want to do it. I don't get in the middle of family issues here. So, Dewayne, I'll ask you this. Latoya mentioned that you're from a musical family, that you got a lot of kinfolk who play music. Tell us what a Williams family gathering would be like. Just kind of introduce us to that, especially how music would play a part of that.
In our family, church has been really kind of, in a lot of ways, the center of the family as far as togetherness. So as far as a larger setting or a larger gathering with extended family, that's most likely where that's going to transpire. But you are going to see folks bringing in guitars and bringing in amplifiers and bringing in a drum set, and probably some random folks you might not even know who aren't in the family, but feel connected to the family because of ministries that the family has been assigned to. So that's mostly what you see as far as family gathering together. Is a combination of church service and music, or sometimes just a jam session somewhere, someplace, most likely in somebody's church.
Right.
Where we're there just, not necessarily preparing for anything necessarily, even just expressing ourselves artistically and musically as people.
Okay. And would the music be exclusively gospel, or would you throw in some other kinds in
I
there?
think we're interesting in that regard because I think gospel is a place in your own mind and in your own heart. But I think you incorporate your experiences in life as well into that, and sometimes those places don't necessarily originate from the church. So from our perspective, whether there's lyrics or not, we're playing gospel music. Now from somebody else's perspective who's listening, they might say, and often say, and even in our church settings, that didn't sound quite like gospel to me. That got a little funky. Or that sounded a little bit like rock and roll to me. That's because we've been kind of incorporating experiences that we have, as I said, in life, into the art that we produce and create, and that comes out of us in that particular way.
Okay. Okay, since Crystal has already decided that LillyAnne's got the next question here, I see you're taking over my question list. I'm having to change the order of my questions, Art. But no, Crystal, Mountain View has a unique program for teaching roots music to students, specifically middle school. I guess what most people would call middle school students, and maybe late elementary school students. LillyAnne, you're a person who, I'm thinking she's over. I can't see her, but I'm pretty sure she's over there. There you are. You're someone who went through the Roots music program. Could you tell us a little bit about about that at Mountain View Schools and how that has impacted your life.
Yeah, so starting in 4th grade, children who are in the Stone County school districts are provided with free instrument of their choice within the American folk genre, as well as free instructors on those instruments if they choose to, and they are taught the old-time folk music that is so popular in Mountain View. If they show promise and they still want to continue to play it, they are moved into what's called ensemble in 5th grade, which is where you learn how to work with other musicians who are still learning as a band together. And that's actually how, if you've ever seen Sylamore Special here, that's how me and Mary, the fiddle player, have met. And of course Gordon, her little brother, went through it too, and Turner went through it for a while there. But it really kind of was the main factor in pushing me into music. Mom tried to get me to play music when I was young, but she made the great mistake of trying to make me play fiddle, which I hated. And if you know anything about starting on violin, you know that it is a rough start. The notes are bad. If you have any good ear, you're bound to be hurting by the end of your first lesson. And so I just couldn't stand it. And so by the time the 4th grade rolled around and I was offered the chance to learn an instrument, I thought, you know what, I've had enough of this fiddle. I'm going to choose a total polar opposite of the fiddle, which is the banjo. And so I chose the banjo, and of course my dad, who plays the banjo, was like, yes, my girl, that's her. And my mom was like, I cannot believe you would do that. I don't know why you would choose that. And but it was kind of like in retaliation, just a little bit. But in the end, I just fell in love with it, and it really pushed me into being the musician that I am today.
All right. Latoya, could you introduce us a little to your mom and dad? Tell them what influence they've had in your life through music, and just kind of tell us, because probably most of the folks haven't seen you perform yet, just kind of tell us how your family band is made up and who does what in it.
Well, my mom and dad play different roles as far as the band itself. I want to say, I really feel like my dad was like the visionary in the family, and he always would say, catch the vision, you know. He had a dream that he wanted to carry, but he also says that my grandfather had the same dream, so it's been a generational dream for us to sing together as a family. My mom comes more like a business manager side of things, as well as wardrobe. You are not about to step out of the house looking any type of way with her. You will wear that dress now. But no, my mom just kind of keeps us encouraged to, you know, and just letting us know, like, you can do this, you know. It takes a special set of parents to be like, hey, my kids want to do this, my husband wants to do this, and I support them. And not only that, I'm sure, you know, my mom didn't know what she was getting when they met when she was 15, and my dad was a little older, but I'm sure she didn't know that this is what her future would be, and so she got on board and caught the vision. And Dad say, hey, I want a piece of equipment, and she'd go get it, and I want another, until we had a full studio. And it takes a special woman to be able to see that dream, instead of like, you wasted my money. But, you know, she didn't say that. You know, she had his back, and, you know, I'm just thankful for both of my parents and how they worked together to make a dream come true.
Yeah. Dewayne, do you have anything to add to that, or you just want to wait till the next one?
I'll just say amen on that.
Okay. Crystal, you grew up in a musical family, so I mean, this is something you've been doing basically all your life. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience growing up in a kind of a family band, and that being a key part of your life?
Yes. So I grew up not knowing music. As a matter of fact, my very first memory was two guitar necks crossed, and me looking up at them and hearing this old Merle Haggard song, which my mom and dad would die if they knew I was talking about that now, because they're diehard bluegrassers now. But back in the day, my dad did sing some outlaw country. But anyways, when I was a kid, they would send the kids off to bed when we were having pickings at the house, And we were allowed to sit up and listen to the picking as long as we were quiet and did not interrupt. So they would form a circle, the picking circle, and they would put the quilt down on the floor, and we would lay there, and as long as we were quiet, we could stay there and listen to the music, which usually put us to sleep. Either way we were going to sleep, my mom knew that, but the guitar necks being crossed, I thought for the longest time that must have been a dream or something, because if two guitar players are facing each other, the guitar neck's here, the other guitar neck's here, they wouldn't be crossing each other. But I can remember that so distinctly, and they were singing that old song, The Fugitive. I don't know if you know that song, but anyways, they were singing The Fugitive. I remember the song, and I remember that happening, and my mom said, oh, well, yeah, the old Gossage boy, he played left-handed. So, and he always wanted to sit by your dad because he didn't know what the chords were. So, yeah, that just validated. It's like, well, my very earliest memory, which had to have been around 3 years old, was of music. And I remember the song. That's been something that stuck with me my whole life, as far as like, I remember songs. I may not remember your phone number or anything else, but if you come and you play with me, jam somewhere, I'm probably going to remember your instrument. I'll remember your instrument, but I don't remember you. I'm like, open your case. Let me see if I do remember you. But I grew up surrounded by musicians. My parents, my dad was playing from the time he was big enough to play. His parents played. They used to have big pickings over at my grandma's house, and they would roll up the carpet up against the wall, and they had a piano that was up against the wall, and they would play, and they would have dancing and pickings on the weekends. That's what people did, and it's so funny because that's still what we're doing in Mountain View. We're still having those pickings, especially on the weekends. That's what people do when you don't have much else to do with. That's what you did. And we grew up on a creek, and short of fishing, that's what you did: fishing and hunting and picking. And so it was second nature for that to continue with me, and it became second nature for me to continue that with my daughter. My husband also plays. My mother was a banjo player, and I married a banjo player. And then my daughter went ahead and played banjo too, after I tried so hard to get a fiddle player in the family. But anyway, so I won't let my granddaughter, who is now joining the pickings that we have, when we have family reunions, we have pickings too, and I won't let her touch my fiddle. And she cries, and she, please, can I touch it? I'm like, no, you can't, but you can go play the banjo. I don't want to play the banjo. I'm like, I see the plan is working. So, yes. So I grew up in it, and I've never known anything else.
All right. Dewayne, could you tell us a little bit about, of course, right now you've got a 4-person kind of family band here. Could you tell us when that started and how that developed over the years within the church, I'm guessing, but just kind of give us a little background specifically about the Williams family group. Yeah.
Certainly. Kind of to her point where she said she never really knew anything else. It's kind of something we were born into, to a degree, myself and my sister. You know, as soon as I was of age to be able to hold a guitar in my hands, my dad began to teach me bass guitar. So I knew, the names of my strings probably when I was 4 years old, and really started developing playing probably when I was 6 years old. And same, he tried to put a bass in her hands too. She kind of rejected that thing, but she developed vocally amazingly. So we've always been a unit that's been part of a larger unit. When he put that bass guitar into my hands, he had a family group with his siblings called the Williams Singers. And that was really my first introduction to playing in a family group environment. So it's kind of a larger thing that developed into something else over time. My auntie, she developed cancer, and she passed away in 1992. So it kind of splintered the family musically for a while in that regard. And myself, really, even as a child, kind of stepped into that place and began to work closely with my dad musically to make sure some recordings were accomplished and finished. So as far as the unit that you're seeing today, it's kind of been woven in and out really throughout the entirety of my life. And we were blessed to be able to found a church in Poplar Bluff, Missouri called Emmanuel House of Praise. My father's the pastor of the church, and we all function musically within the context of the church. So when you see him playing that double neck there, he's playing that double neck guitar in the church. And you don't see a lot of pastors sometimes you might see a pastor who plays organ. You generally don't see a pastor who's in the service throughout the entirety of the service, who is part of the band of the church as well, playing throughout the entirety of everything. But that's a role that he plays also. So what you saw on that stage a little bit earlier, that's what you would see if you came to one of our Sunday services any given Sunday. So we're kind of you might think of as an artist in residence at the ministry, along with my parents pastoring the ministry.
Okay, all right. Okay, LillyAnne, you and your mom are part of Sylamore Special, a bluegrass group. Can you tell us about the origins of Sylamore Special, how that came to be, about how long you've been around with that group?
Yes, so that group formed in 2021, and we really just formed to play a competition up in Branson, Missouri called the KSMU Youth and Bluegrass Competition. And Mary called me, because me and Mary have been in plenty of bands before together, but she called me and she was like, would you like to form a band specific for this festival? And I was like, or this competition, and I was like, of course, let's do it, let's go. And so we, of course, she had her banjo player, and of course, Gordon, her brother, always is just there. She kind of makes him. He's with the deal. He's with the package. And so then we had Turner, which we had known for a bit there. He was our friend, he was our guitar player. And at that time, we had someone else playing bass for us. She was around our age too. And so we packed up, and we were practiced a lot. And about from January till May, in May is the competition. And we went there, and luckily we won first place. It was a blessing, it was an honor. And but then later on, the bass player and the original bass player left the band, and Mary asked, like, could your mom fill in for these few shows while we're looking for a bass player? And we were like, and she's like, of course, she loves to play with us. She loves to play with me and Mary, known us our entire lives. And so after that, she just kind of kept playing with us, and so here we are.
Okay, all right, thank you. I've got a few more questions, but I thought if any of the audience, if you've thought of any questions you would like to ask any of our folks here on the stage, this would be a good time to do it. We do have a mic up in front. If you've got a question that you'd like us all to hear. Anybody? Okay, I'll just keep asking questions then. All right, Latoya, let's go back to you, or you or Dewayne, either one can answer this. We all have families, and we know there are blessings and challenges that come with families. How would you describe the experience of playing in a family group and being part of this family musical church group in terms of any challenges or blessings? Just kind of how would you that family dynamic that goes on in there?
I'm really thankful for our family dynamic. It's really, one question I said, well, Wayne, what if they ask us, we call him Wayne, but so what if they ask us what our thought process is of writing songs? And honestly, our thought process of writing songs, and you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but sometimes they come to me in dreams. And it's like God speaks to me, and he's like, this is the melody that I want you to sing, or this is the background, or these are the words that I want you to say. And then I'll come to Dewayne, and I'll be like, hey, this is what God showed me in a dream. And then when I come back, he's got like a whole instrumental going, and all the different instruments, and it's like he literally took it out of my dream and out of my brain, and then it's this. And so I just think that that's what makes it special. My children's father, he used to always ask me, well, how come you don't go record with this person, and I said, it's not the same as recording with my brother, because he gets it, he can feel it, and I believe that, you know, God ordained us to do this thing together. And so that dynamic, you know, just between me and him is just amazing. And then, you know, adding mom and dad to the mix, and then my children. Y'all just don't know what it's like to sing up there. I never knew what my daddy felt like until I got up there with my own sons and sung, and it just makes you just so proud of them that they, you know, had enough courage to do it. And so it's a generational thing. So.
Do you want to say something?
Certainly. I just add to what you're saying, you know, and I think you're kind of alluding to the fact that sometimes when you're working with family, there can be, oftentimes there's friction, and there's, you know, personality conflict, the kind of personality conflict you have just because you're siblings. For a lot of people, that kind of spills into the music, and we really have had kind of the opposite result as far as how we connect and work with each other musically. Sometimes that proximity that you have to siblings can be a divisive thing, but I think for us it has been the cohesion has been kind of the glue. And as you said, you know, I kind of understand where she's coming from if she writes a song, and you know what she's trying to say to the world, and maybe a different way than somebody who can grow up with her. And I think that's what she's trying to explain to the audience. You know, you can't go to a random stranger and expect them to understand your worldview the same if they didn't grow up in the same household as you, and understand what you're trying to tell the world. And you know, same thing. You know, when my dad writes songs, you know, I grew up as his disciple, you might say, or he's the tutor or the teacher. So I understand, you know, the things that he wants to speak and wants to say artistically and musically. So you kind of put me into the place to where I'm kind of a generation back musician. You know, I came of age, grew up in the 90s. You know, I was born in the 80s, came of age in the 90s. But a lot of the way that I approach music probably comes more from the 70s and from the 60s, and that's because, you know, that's the household I grew up in. You know, I had a 1970s bass player put a bass in my hand when I was, you know, in elementary school. So I feel like I get him as far as when he's trying to speak something and say something. My sister and my father, I think they think similarly, and then I bring a different element to those things. They have a great idea of what they're trying to accomplish, and I think in my dad's mind, he's thinking, okay, I want lead guitar, and I want the chorus to be like this, and I want bass guitar, and I want the bass line to go like this. And when I add my element, it goes to the next level of depth. So it's the bass guitar, but I want a Fender jazz bass, and I want the Fender jazz bass on the neck position. And I want it with, you know, round rings, and I want it to sound like it's going through an amp head. So, you know, it's just that addition of specificity that helps make everything work together, because everybody has a role and knows their role.
Okay, good. Crystal, can for those of you who haven't seen Sylamore Special, most of the members are around LillyAnne's
here
age.
Comes this.
Yeah, here.
If you're going to ask the question of how old I am,
No, that's okay.
it's going to be radio silence.
I'll change course here.
Okay.
But it is an age gap question.
It is.
We've got it's you and four really young folks in the band. What is your role in the band? But beyond musically, is your role sort of that as a mother or a mentor?
I would say that, of course, LillyAnne, I've coached her whole life in the bands that she's been in, played in the bands that she was in. I was their coach. I was Mary and LillyAnne's coach when Mary was 7.5, LillyAnne was 9. They were already in a band. I coached that band all the way through. That was one of the Music Roots bands, but I can't, because I teach music and I teach school during the day. My role is not to be their specific teacher for their instruments, but they would have me coach the band after school, get the band together, and we would practice. And I taught them to sing harmonies and all these good things. The thing I would say is that spending all that time watching people grow up and people trusting you. Mary's mother and father would send her, especially her mother, would send her with me to go 2 states away for festivals. And I was responsible for her. And Mary tell you, I treat her just like my own. Speak of the devil, the saints appear. There she is right there. I treat her just like my own. And when we get on stage, this was back before Sylamore Special, we get on stage, and even now with Sylamore Special, they always think that Mary is my daughter instead of LillyAnne. And I always say she is. She's my daughter by another mother, because she is literally, I think of her as mine. I think of her little brother as part of our family, and all of her little siblings who all play too. If you haven't checked out the Parker unit, you should check them out, because they're all her little brothers and sisters play, and we love them. And I think that has always been the kind of thing. It's made it a family. Every band that we've been in, those kids, even though I'm the old woman in the group, but I'm like the mama in the group. And I love them little babies, and I'm gonna take care of them. And I tell them when I'm coaching them, if I'm telling you something on stage that you need to change, I'm not telling you that because I'm picking on you or because I'm jealous of you like another band member might be or whatever. I'm telling you that because I love you and I want what's best for you. I'm trying to help you grow as a musician, but I'm also trying to help you grow as a person. And so I will say that I've been so blessed. LillyAnne has been so blessed and fortunate to be in bands with children of really good character as well as musicianship. They are outstanding musicians. If you've not heard them, you owe it to yourself to hear these kids. Don't come and listen to me, just come and watch them. They're outstanding musicians. They're all champions. They're just amazing. But more than that, and that's what you'll see on stage, but more than that, they are fabulous people. They're good people. And you don't find that just everywhere, especially in this day and time and with teenagers. That's not always the case, you know, but these kids are exceptional. And so I would say Mary just turned 18, so she's now an adult officially. Before that, my role a lot of time was as the guardian, acting in lieu of the absent parent or whoever. I've been guardians for them, and I think all of them know I love them dearly and they can come to me, and it's happened. I mean, it's not just the stuff on the stage, it's not just music, it's the life things that'll come and say, hey, do you have a minute, can I come and talk to you or whatever. And I think when you play music that much together, they all become family bands. I mean, they're not family, but they are family. And in ways they're closer than a lot of my family are to me, but I spend a lot of time with them. And so I don't know how to answer that except to say we're family.
LillyAnne, I'll ask for your perspective on this. Of course, you're an award-winning banjo player and a terrific musician. Do you ever have moments where you think it's odd that you're playing in a band with your mom, or is there ever any time when that mom-daughter conflict can kind of rear up and happen?
Not really. I mean, me and Mom have always been very close. I mean, I think of her as my best friend, and honestly, I was never a really rebellious child and never had that.
Except for the banjo
Except
thing.
for the banjo. That was one-time thing. That's in the past now. We don't talk about that anymore. But that's literally as rebellious as I've ever gotten. And I never had that urge or that desire to just go against my mom's word. I mean, I believe the Bible tells children to obey their parents, and they know better than we do. They've been around a lot longer. And it goes for anybody who's older than you. They know more than you do. And so for me, I always trusted Mom's word. The biggest fights we've ever had was what dress we were going to wear to the show and why was it not clean beforehand. You know,
Yes.
that was an issue a few times, but it never came down to me having a disdain for my mother. I think I can never imagine it. I really couldn't.
Now you're LillyAnne. I'll just stay with you for a minute. You're away at college, as we were just talking about. Is the music and the family connection? Do you think that's going to be strong enough to bring you back home after college to keep that, to keep that family musical thing going?
Of course. I mean, for me, it is I love my family, like my blood, my family, but really, Mountain View is my family. We're such a close-knit community, and the musicians that I've been raised with, they are my family. And for me, Mountain View, I'm so deeply rooted in Mountain View that to completely transplant me anywhere else, I'm not going to thrive. I really don't think I would. And so my desire to come back to Mountain View is not limited to my family. It's about the culture. It's about the people that I was raised around. And honestly, I've loved DC. It's been a great honor to be here and to see everything and to experience other cultures. But y'all, I am ready to be home. I mean, I miss home. I miss my people. But I think that's true for anybody who's really been raised in a community that loves them.
Thank you. Dewayne, you mentioned earlier about your dad playing the double neck guitar during services. Could you describe how central music is to the church service at Emmanuel? And I mean, it sounds like it never stops. Could you tell us about that? I mean, it sounds pretty interesting.
Certainly. And different churches have different traditions, and I don't think any of them are greater or lesser than any others. There's some churches only have a cappella music, only clap their hands. Some churches are organized around maybe an organist and a drummer. Our I guess vision for what we want to be musically in the church might be a little bit different than a lot of people, and as you're kind of alluding to, it's very important and very central to the service. And you are correct in the fact that from the beginning of the service to the end of the service, there's music that's part of the service, and that's something that might be different than other traditions as well. Oftentimes when it might be time for the pastor or guest minister or whomever to speak, the musicians sit down. But in our tradition, that's not the way that it goes, and there's what they refer to as call and response often within the context of the message that goes forth. And within the Black American tradition, oftentimes, not all the time, but a lot of preachers, they essentially sing their messages, and they refer to it often as hooping, is what it's called. And they might speak up until a certain point and get to the point in the message where it's time for the musicians to step up and be part of the sermon, and the audience as well is part of the sermon. And the preacher will begin to sing the rest of his message, and this is improvisational. So it's not really, I don't know if there's really a way to exactly rehearse it. It's something that you have to have been born into and see and understand and grow into to know what you're supposed to be doing when that begins to occur. So, music is, I don't want to say everything in the service because there's often, there obviously, depth that needs to be spoken and things that need to occur, but it's woven intricately into every element of it, and I'd say that, specifically for our church.
Okay. Yeah. Crystal, I've got a question for you. You mentioned your granddaughter that you think might be the fiddle player.
She's my great hope. Yes.
Okay. I would guess that you're already forming in your mind maybe a vision for the next generation family group. Is that something that you can see coming on maybe?
Okay, yes. Now, see, my son, we haven't talked about him. My son is 11 years and 1 day older than LillyAnne. He is a fine mandolin player. He's a good guitar player. He plays bass. He plays everything except, he's like his mom. He can play everything except a banjo. You know, my granddaughter, she loves all the music, but her mother, and this was something, I've had this discussion already with LillyAnne. There's not a lot of restrictions that I'm putting on my future son-in-law, but one of them is that he cannot be tone deaf. That is just shit. I shouldn't even have to have said that, but somehow I missed telling my son that. But anyways, so my granddaughter has struggled, and we've heard some screeching and singing, and we're like, oh, well, maybe she'll play, you know, kind of thing. Because maybe singing's not going to be her gift, but she is all about it. She loves the dance. She loves the traditional dance. She loves the music. And so, you know, I'm hoping for more grandchildren for my son. And I'm hoping someday, if y'all know of any fine young men, I'd like to talk to you after the show. Hoping one of these days that LillyAnne will take up with some young man that'll sweep her off her feet and actually enjoy the banjo, because that'll be the, you know, not, you can't just find them everywhere. But anyways, she is already going to she's already told me I get to live close to them. Maybe, like, she started with me in an in-law quarter, and then it moved to, you know, like, she's going to build onto her house. It'll be right there. And now I'm in a house somewhere on their property, so I'm hoping she hurry up and gets married before I'm in the next county. But anyways,
You'll be there.
Yeah, but I know, that's what I'm worried about. So, but I'm hoping when she has children that this next little bunch will come on and play with them. My son, you know, as he settles into his job and his career, LillyAnne will just be taking off in hers. But my hope is that the two of them will join forces and play together. When they were growing up, my son, as he played, we had an all-gospel bluegrass band. And so he was with us throughout that whole thing. But LillyAnne, at our last recording, she lost her first tooth in the recording studio. So I knew she was born to be a musician. But anyways, she lost her first tooth in that last recording that we recorded. So it's been a while. He's kind of gone on, and, you know, he's living life and working out of state, so not around a whole lot. But as he's settling back into Arkansas and in our area, I'm hoping LillyAnne will come on. They'll join forces and maybe actually be a great band, and maybe they'll need a bass player. Who knows? I know where they can find one that works cheap.
All right. Latoya or Dewayne, one of you mentioned earlier that your grandpa had a similar vision for this that your dad, Leroy, had. I'd like to hear about Grandpa if I could, and maybe the influence he's had on this, even though he's not here with us, and I don't know, you know, he's still with us. He just ain't with us in D.C. If you could tell me, you know, kind of what his influence is on everything you do.
Well, I'm sure that he has had a different influence on me and Dewayne, but for me, our grandfather, he's just the epitome of, like, wisdom. Even in I'm going back to what your daughter LillyAnne said about community. My grandfather is like one of the pillars of our community, and so there's a certain expectation that comes with being his grandchildren. Like, everybody in the whole church world is looking at you, and you better not mess up, type of thing. So you're gonna either make him proud or not, and you know, that's the small town, the life. But my grandfather he still has a singing group of his own that he's sang with for probably 60 years now, and he's also a pastor. He was pastor in 2 churches, and now he's pastor in 1. And but just singing, like my brother said, it was instrumental to even any family gathering. At some point, somebody was fixing to be singing. And he also mentioned my dad's older sister. When she passed away, she was 33. And every day the family would meet up at her home to pray, and we would call it the family prayer. And so we grew up doing that for several years she struggled with this, but my grandfather would always start out the prayer with a song, "Don't Forget the Family Prayer," and then everyone would join into that song, and so it would be the whole family, kids and all, singing. And my aunt, while she was struggling with cancer, was trying to sing "Don't Forget the Family Prayer" with us. And so it's just been, like he said, a part of our life. Every part of our life has included. All of my dad's sisters sang too. And so it's the family, the whole family. And I know that started with my grandpa.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple minutes left. Crystal, so much of this is, this is generational. It's obvious within both of your families. This is a generational thing, music and kind of centering the family and keeping everything together. Was there an elder in your family that you look back on now as kind of the person who maybe started this, or kind of inspires what you still do today?
Well, of course, I go back as far as my grandmother. My dad's mother was half Lakota and half Osage. She always was writing songs. And she would walk around the house and she'd be singing, and she'd be coming up with a song. And some of them were the silliest things, and some of them were just ridiculous. But she was always writing. That was my dad's side of the family. My mom's side of the family, none of them played until my mom came along. She learned to play piano in church. She wanted to be able to play the piano, and she did that until she learned to play banjo when she married my dad. Of course, it's really hard. Well, nowadays we have keyboards, but back in those days it was hard to drag a piano around everywhere you had a gig. So, she learned to pick up the banjo. She was a songwriter, and I think when I look at it, I see my grandmother, that influence on that side, my mom with that influence on that side, and between the two of them, I really feel like that was where that came down and really got roots. I think if it had been on just one side, or even just on the other, I don't know that we would have stayed in it the way we did. But it was such a merger of those two, and my mom's songwriting influenced my songwriting. I thought, I didn't even know LillyAnne had any interest in songwriting until we were getting ready to record her solo CD, and I had started working on a song called Back to the Ozarks, and I got to the second verse. I said, I just don't really know. And she said, do you care if I work on it? And I was like, okay, thought, well, this is going to be something. And she came back, and when she had written it, the lines were talking about how the music, like in the evening at the close of the day, which is when Mountain View folks get together to pick, is at the close of the day. When it starts getting dark, it becomes a square and picks. At the close of, in my mind, I replay at the close of the day how the air was always filled with love and song. And the music seemed to me like leaves upon the breeze, abundant as the friends who sing along. And we can hear the mountains echoing our song, which it's down in the valley, it's surrounded by the mountains. And I burst into tears when she brought me the lyrics, because I realized that the thing that I love so much and would have done in spite of my parents not being, if they had never taught me music, I feel like I would have still been drawn to it. Sometimes you feel when you bring your children up to play and perform on stage, maybe this has been my dream and not theirs. And when she came back with that, I just cried. I was like, okay, I didn't mess you up completely. Yes, this is actually in you. It's not just me. And so that I feel like that if I look back, I see those. I hope when she looks back, she gets that picture too, and that she passes that on down to her children. And then when they look back, they go, well, I remember when, and I hope that's the case. I know Pam's sitting here and her family, the Simmons family. I think this is the same story with all family bands, but her family, they influenced our family. I'm sure you guys have family bands that y'all looked at the same way, and it becomes a community. And like Pam's my family. She is my family outside my family, like the Sylamore Special. They're all my family. So I think when we look at that, we can see the influences back there and hope that we're passing that on and keep that blood flow going.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to close us out. We're out of time, folks. I'm sure the McCools and Williamses will be glad to answer any questions you might have. But let's give them one more round of applause.